Hi, my name is Tori and I am a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in pelvic dysfunction, which means I treat things that can go wrong around the pelvis. Now, back in January, I shared a video talking about my personal experience coming off of hormonal birth control after using it, specifically using the pill for 10 years or so. In that video, I mentioned that my primary reason, or at least one of the primary reasons that I decided to get off of birth control is because I have been dealing with gut issues for around the same amount of time, 10, maybe 11 years now, specifically upper GI issues. And I had read that there is potentially a connection between birth control and gut health. And so I wanted to give my gut the best optimal fighting chance to heal. And I decided that if I was really gonna try to heal my gut, then I had to try and get off of birth control and see if I could make a difference for myself. All of that being said, I got a request to more thoroughly investigate birth control and gut health, to create a video where I really deep dive into the relationship between specifically the pill, oral contraceptives, and gut health. So here we are. I learned so much on this research journey, and I will say right now, there's really no way to make this a short video. It is going to be a longer video, but it is cram-packed with really interesting information, so stick around. I promise it'll be worthwhile. Two things that I think are really important that I say out loud before I shared what I learned about gut health and the pill. Thing number one, there is no doubt in my mind that the pill can come with some incredible benefits for some women, both in the form of physical health and in the form of sexual empowerment. In no way in my sharing what I've learned am I trying to tell you to not take the pill. That is not my intention. I think that is a very personal choice, and I support any decision that you as a woman in control of her body makes. However, like all prescription medications, there are always health risks associated with them. My intention in sharing this video is to empower you with all of the knowledge possible so that when you make a decision about whether or not to get on birth control, continue birth control, get off of birth control, whatever, you are coming from a place of knowing. But that decision is always yours. Thing number two that I wanted to say out loud is that I am so honored to be doing request videos. I think that out of the last 6 videos that I uploaded, 5 of them were requests, and I am having so much fun, and it is such an honor. So please keep the requests coming. I'm really open to any and all content suggestions, so thank you. Check out the description below for links to any of the studies that I mentioned during this video, and also timestamps if you want to skip around in the video. And without further ado, let's dive into the relationship between birth control, specifically oral contraceptives, and gut health. So in order to understand the potential relationship between oral contraceptives and gut health, you have to understand how birth control pills work. So we're going to do a quick overview of how birth control pills help to prevent pregnancy. Birth control pills usually contain 2 synthetic hormones that mimic both progesterone and estrogen. Taking these synthetic hormones prevents pregnancy because it suppresses a woman's natural production and regulation of said hormones. I would be more than happy to make a video all about estrogen and progesterone and exactly how they affect a woman's cycle and how birth control changes that. If you want to see that video, let me know in the comment section below, but that would make for a super long video today. So for now, trust me when I say during a natural menstrual cycle, estrogen and progesterone go up and down, they ebb and flow, they naturally fluctuate, and different levels of those hormones mean different things throughout the cycle. When you take birth control pills, you no longer have that natural fluctuation of those hormones. Instead, you have a static amount of them for all or most of the time, depending on whether or not you're taking that little week of placebo pills. Taking a consistent amount of estrogen helps to prevent pregnancy because it stops ovulation entirely. Without ovulation, you don't produce an egg. When there's no egg, then sperm can't fertilize that egg, and without there being an egg for sperm to fertilize, you can't get pregnant. Taking a consistent amount of synthetic progesterone also helps to stop pregnancy, but through a slightly different lens. It essentially changes the environment of your uterus, and it also changes the kind of cervical fluid, which is often called discharge, that you produce. It makes it really difficult for a fertilized egg to actually implant on the uterus lining, and it also makes it really difficult for sperm to even survive in your vagina. Again, this topic is worthy of its own video, how does birth control work? But I think that that's enough of an overview to move into the next topic, which would be the microbiome. It is impossible to talk about gut health without introducing the microbiome, which is the name that is given to the bacteria and their DNA that live in our gut, that live in our intestines. The microbiome is a really big deal. Get this, according to the Human Microbiome Project, in a healthy adult, these bacterial cells actually outnumber human cells and can account for up to 5 pounds of adult body weight. The microbiome is so important that some scientists are referring to it as a virtual organ within an organ. We are learning more and more that the microbiome plays a crucial role in our health and in the function of our human bodies. While we are still discovering exactly how this organ works, we know these bacteria help us digest our food, absorb nutrients, produce vitamins, regulate our immune system, and even play a role in our mood. So then, knowing that the microbiome is a collection of bacteria, it is possible to have an imbalance of that bacteria. An imbalance of the gut bacteria in the medical world is known as dysbiosis. Essentially, dysbiosis just means that you don't have the right ratio of good bacteria to bad bacteria living in your gut. When this happens, everything that we just mentioned could be affected negatively. Digestion and absorption of nutrients, which could tie into food allergies, food intolerances, and even bowel disease. Immune health, which could potentially tie into autoimmune disorders. And even regulation of our mood, which could potentially tie into mood disorders like depression. Okay, so clearly the microbiome is super important, but then the next logical question for our topic would be, are hormones and the microbiome related? In short, yes. If we zoom way out, it is clear that the gut and the brain communicate with each other via hormones. If we zoom back into the two hormones that we were discussing, estrogen and progesterone, the answer is still yes. At a very specific level, it seems that estrogen and progesterone can affect peristalsis. Peristalsis is the name given to that rhythmic-like contraction of the intestines. It's these rhythmic contractions that actually propel food and eventually stool through the intestinal tract to be absorbed and also to eventually end up in the rectum, where you are going to excrete it into the world via a bowel movement, aka poop. Estrogen increases those contractions, or said another way, estrogen increases gut motility and makes things move a little bit more. So if you had some sort of imbalance in estrogen and progesterone and you had too much estrogen, you could have a lot of gut motility and you could end up with diarrhea. Progesterone, on the other hand, does the opposite thing. It decreases those rhythmic contractions, or said another way, it decreases gut motility, it slows things down. So again, if you had an imbalance in estrogen and progesterone and you had too much progesterone, you could potentially have constipation and bloat. Get this, estrogen and the microbiome are so connected that there is actually a subset of bacteria within the microbiome called the estrobolome. The estrobolome are thought to be in charge of regulating estrogen within the body. So crazy and cool and complex, but with all of this in mind, we can finally move into actually answering the proposed question, does birth control, specifically in our case, the pill oral contraceptives, affect gut health? Yes, it does seem that birth control can affect gut health, and in a number of different ways. We talked about dysbiosis earlier, not having enough good bacteria in relationship to bad bacteria within the gut. Anything that promotes inflammation within the body can promote dysbiosis within the gut, and it does seem that birth control and gut inflammation are potentially related. In fact, according to this 2017 meta-analysis, there does seem to be a a clear increase in the risk of inflammatory bowel disease, which is an umbrella term used to describe chronic inflammatory disorders of the gut like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis associated with birth control pills. More specifically, in those that are genetically susceptible, women that are taking oral contraceptives do have a 24% increased risk of developing Crohn's and a 30% increased risk in developing ulcerative colitis. Maybe this association has to do with that connection between the microbiome and immune function that we were discussing earlier. It's hard to say. Building on the idea of dysbiosis, any sort of disruption in the estrobolome, that group, that subset of bacteria that are in charge of regulating estrogen within the body, would also be a form of dysbiosis. In a totally healthy body and gut, estrogen is produced in the ovaries and then enters into the bloodstream and travels all throughout the body, going to the breasts, to the brain, to the bones, to the uterus, and eventually it makes its way to the liver. In the liver, it is broken down and deactivated or turned off. This deactivated, detoxified, turned off estrogen then enters into the intestines and exits your body via your stool. Now, the estrobolome should have a healthy balance between that good bacteria and that bad bacteria, but if that good and bad bacteria balance is out of whack and there's more bad bacteria than good, what can end up happening is this deactivated, turned off estrogen can be reactivated or turned back on within the gut, and then it re-enters into the bloodstream at higher levels than it should. This is an issue because that increased level of estrogen within the blood can lead to something within the medical community that's known as estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance is associated with a lot of things, with PMS, with ovarian cysts, with uterine fibroids, with cramping, with endometriosis, with polycystic ovarian syndrome, with infertility, and potentially related to an increased risk of cancers, specifically breast cancer and uterine cancer. I couldn't find a lot of research that really delved into this area. That being said, I did find a lot of functional medicine physicians that relate that constant synthetic estrogen level that's created by hormonal birth control with potential estrogen dominance. Of course, the only real way to find out would be to get your hormone levels tested. However, what is very clear in the research and what has been clear for decades is that hormonal birth control in the form of oral contraceptive use does deplete nutrients, and some pretty important nutrients at that. I'm going to go ahead and read you off this list. Oral contraceptive use depletes folate, riboflavin, vitamins B6, B12, C, and E, as well as some important minerals like magnesium, selenium, and zinc. But we aren't sure why. Some people think it's because birth control does affect the microbiome, which could then affect a woman's ability to digest food and absorb those nutrients. Others argue that it has less to do with the intestines and more to do with the liver and the demand that's put on the liver to actually metabolize birth control pills. Regardless, deficiencies in these vitamins and minerals could definitely be related to a lot of the side effects, the common side effects of oral contraceptives. What's really interesting to me about this whole vitamin and mineral depletion thing is that it's been well documented and well understood in the literature since the 1970s. We're talking close to 40 years of us knowing that this is a thing, and I just find it so interesting. I don't know about the women watching, but I've never had a physician, when talking to me about birth control, talk to me about maybe supplementing with some of these vitamins and minerals. No one ever brought that up to me. I do want to end by circling back to what I was originally talking about in the first video that I had made in January. I originally stopped taking birth control not because I had done such a deep dive into gut health and its relationship to birth control, but because I did know that there was some form of potential negative relationship that was surfacing in the literature, and I was really trying to heal my personal gut issues. I specifically have been dealing with upper GI issues, acid reflux, chronic heartburn. In the medical community, it's called GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, for more than 10 years, and I wanted to give my body the absolute best fighting chance to heal. Without picking apart all of the details, I did want to share that in this specific research journey journey, I did learn that increased levels of progesterone can affect the sphincter that connects your esophagus and your stomach. Essentially, what's going on when someone has heartburn is that when you eat something, when you drink something, whatever, there's a sphincter that connects your esophagus and your stomach, and you want that sphincter to stay closed so that the incredibly acidic environment of the stomach doesn't travel back up into the esophagus. That's why they call it acid reflux. It feels like your throat is burning. Essentially, what I learned is that increased levels of progesterone can cause a weakening of that sphincter, which would then allow those stomach contents to come back up into the esophagus and create heartburn. In fact, it seems that this is why a lot of pregnant women who will naturally have an increase in progesterone, it's a part of pregnancy, suffer from heartburn. It definitely makes me pause and wonder how much of my GERD issues are to do with birth control. It's really hard to say. I really can't remember had I already started birth control when I started having these symptoms or not. But regardless, I would be more than happy to do a video all about my struggle with GERD and how much I've learned in trying to heal it naturally. I have managed to get off of PPIs, and most of the time I actually don't have heartburn. I wouldn't say that I'm 100% healed, but I would say that I am so much better, like significantly better than I used to be. Okay, that was a lot of information, but I think it's fair to say, to answer the original question, yes, there is definitely a relationship between birth control, specifically oral contraceptives and the pill, and gut health. I also think it's fair to say that we're definitely still learning about the intricacies and the details between that relationship and the intricacies and details of the microbiome in general. I also wanted to make sure to say that everything in life is a balance. It's all a balance act. And I think that when you watch a video like this and you hear all of the potential risks associated with birth control all strung in a row, it can sound really, really scary. This information isn't meant to scare anyone. Rather, I want you to feel empowered with this knowledge so that you can make decisions about birth control from a place of knowing. I think that regardless of whether or not birth control is the right call for you as an individual, if after watching this video you're starting to think that maybe some symptoms that you're having are actually related at their core to birth control use, the best thing that you can do is go get some tests done. Check your hormone levels, check your vitamin levels, check your mineral levels, and see, is something out of whack, is something deficient, and if it is, maybe you can work with a trusted physician on supplementation or some other option in order to kind of restore that optimal balance within your body. After learning so much from this particular research journey, I think that I'm gonna go get my blood tested just to see where I'm at. I mentioned in that January video that the one thing that I'm still dealing with, aside from a little bit of heartburn here and there, is back knee. And so I wonder if maybe that's related to one of those vitamin or mineral deficiencies. I'm not sure. I've been supplementing, but this is a whole nother video. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Again, I can't tell you how honored I am to be doing request videos and how grateful I am to be building a platform here on YouTube. This is so, so meaningful to me. Please, if you found this video helpful, like it, share it, comment your experiences, your questions, or content suggestions if you have a specific request of a video that you'd like to see me do. Since this video is related to birth control, which is related to female sexual health, I do want to plug that there is a plane going by and I'm gonna wait for it to go. I'm gonna get some water. I have been collecting anonymous information about the female orgasm experience. If you have female genitalia and you want to participate in the survey, it's 3 questions long. 2 of them are yes or no questions. 1 question is open-ended and it takes about a minute and a half to complete. The link to that survey will be in the description of this video. Subscribe to my channel for more content surrounding pelvic health. Please check me out on Instagram, and thank you so much again for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.